Welcome to Quick Course Digest. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on operations management. It's funny, we're surrounded by things all the time, but we rarely stop to think, how did this actually get here? From your morning coffee to the smartphone in your hand, there is this hidden system, this incredible, complex dance of people, materials, and machines working in the background. Well, that system, that's operations management. It's the invisible engine that orchestrates how pretty much our entire world gets built. Just think about your phone for a second. It's an absolute marvel of technology, right? But it's also a flat-out miracle of coordination. We're talking over 300 individual components, sourced from countries all over the globe. You've got lithium from Chile, silicon from Japan, glass from right here in the USA, and it all has to come together perfectly in a massive factory, likely in China, to become the device you can't live without. So how on earth does all of that happen so seamlessly? Well, that incredible feat of global logistics, that is exactly what operations management is all about. So what is operations management really? It's so much more than just running a factory floor. I like to think of it as the choreography for a massive, complex ballet. It's the art and the science of making sure every part, every person, and every single process moves in perfect sync to create something valuable. It's the grand strategy behind turning a pile of raw materials into a finished product. Now, before a single screw is turned or one line of code is written, operations managers have to make two absolutely fundamental decisions that will shape everything that comes after. First, where do we build our facilities? And second, how do we design the production process itself? These two questions form the foundational blueprint for the entire operation. Choosing where to build a facility isn't just about finding the cheapest piece of land. No way. It's a critical strategic trade-off. Do you want to be close to your customers so you can slash shipping costs? Or is it better to be close to your suppliers to guarantee you get a steady flow of parts? Just look at Apple. They assemble iPhones in China. Why? Well, a huge reason is the incredible ecosystem of component suppliers right there in Asia, in Taiwan, Vietnam, Singapore. Being physically close to them is absolutely critical for speed and efficiency. So, once you know where you're building, you have to decide how. Back in the old days of Henry Ford, it was simple. You had one assembly line building one car model. That was it. And if you wanted to change it, it was a massive, expensive nightmare. Today, the name of the game is flexibility. A perfect example is Ford's modern plant in Chicago. It can build up to 8 different models on just 2 platforms. This lets them pivot almost instantly to meet whatever the customer wants. Okay, so you've got your factory, you've got your flexible assembly line. But that's really just the start of the challenge. Now you have to manage this constant, overwhelming flow of thousands of parts. How do you make sure the right components arrive at the exact moment they're needed without stockpiling a mountain of costly inventory just sitting there? For a lot of companies, the answer is a philosophy that was pioneered by Toyota called just-in-time, or JIT. The goal here is pretty radical. Eliminate waste in all its forms. And I'm not just talking about excess parts, but also wasted time, wasted motion, everything. Instead of having these huge warehouses, JIT aims to have components arrive from suppliers right as they're needed on the assembly line. It's a bit of a high-wire act that demands incredible coordination, but when it works, it dramatically cuts costs and skyrockets efficiency. So if just-in-time is the philosophy, then material requirements planning, or MRP, is the digital brain that makes it all possible. Basically, MRP is a computer-based system that takes the big picture production schedule, what you plan to build, and translates it into this incredibly detailed schedule for every single nut, bolt, and microchip you need. At its core, the logic of an MRP system is actually pretty simple and straightforward. First, it looks at the demand. Okay, how many finished products do you need to make? Then it checks what parts we already have sitting around. Based on that, it calculates exactly what needs to be ordered and when, creating a super precise production schedule. And finally, it keeps an eye on the whole process, alerting managers if there are any delays or issues. All right, so we have our factory. Our process is humming along and our materials are flowing smoothly. We're efficient. But are we good? That brings us to the next crucial piece of the puzzle, quality. And as you're about to see, quality is a whole lot more complex than just making sure something isn't broken. This brings us to a really crucial point. Quality isn't some absolute objective standard that's set in stone. As the consultant Jerry Weinberg famously said, quality is value to some person. What that means is it's entirely defined by the customer. A feature that one person sees as absolutely essential, another person might see as completely useless. Think about it. A Rolex and a smartwatch both tell time, but they deliver vastly different kinds of value and therefore different kinds of quality to different people. There's this wonderful story that just perfectly illustrates this whole idea. It's about a 5-year-old boy on a hotel balcony in Hawaii. He yells out, "Daddy, look, the cars are driving on the water." And his dad, of course, corrects him, saying they're on a bridge. But the boy insists. Finally, his older sister tells their dad to just squat down to the boy's height. And when he did, you know what? From that low angle, it looked exactly like the cars were on the water. It was all about perspective. Quality is the exact same way. It depends entirely on your viewpoint. Okay, so if quality is defined by the customer and it's built on a smooth process, how do organizations actually improve that process? Well, they don't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They use a powerful toolbox of methodologies specifically designed to make good processes great. Two of the most dominant philosophies here are Kaizen and Six Sigma. Kaizen is a Japanese concept that's all about creating a culture of continuous improvement. Everyone, and I mean everyone from the CEO down to the janitor, is empowered to suggest small, incremental changes to make things just a little bit better every day. Six Sigma, on the other hand, is more of a project-based approach. It uses deep statistical analysis to tackle very specific, complex problems and make big, bold improvements. Let's look at a quick Six Sigma example. Imagine a pizza restaurant was getting complaints. Now, their average delivery time was 25 minutes, which isn't terrible, but the problem was the variance. It was huge. Sometimes a pizza would show up in 15 minutes, other times it was 40. This unpredictability was driving customers crazy. After a Six Sigma project, their new average was 8 minutes, with a tiny, tiny variance. Now a pizza almost always showed up in that 7 to 10 minute window. That reliability, that's a huge component of quality. So how'd they do it? Well, one of the tools they used was the Pareto principle. You might know it as the 80-20 rule. They analyzed their sales data and they discovered something pretty revealing. 80% of their orders came from just 10 of their 40 pizza types. So by cutting their menu from 40 pizzas down to just 15, they could stock fewer ingredients, simplify the whole kitchen layout, and make every single pizza much, much faster. This kind of project follows a very structured path, which is often called DMAIC. First, you define the problem, in this case, unpredictable delivery times. Then you measure the current process to get all your baseline data. You analyze that data to find the root causes, like a ridiculously complex menu. You improve the process with targeted changes. And finally, and this is key, you control the new process to make sure those improvements actually stick. We've covered facilities, processes, materials, quality tools, the whole shebang. But we've left the single most important component for last, because absolutely none of this works with the right people who feel engaged and respected in their roles. At the end of the day, all the systems and all the tools in the world are only as good as the people who are using them. When employees feel unheard or unvalued, they might not quit their jobs. Instead, they do something called an invisible walkout. They just check out. They stop trying as hard, they stop caring. It's this quiet protest that happens with hearts and minds, and it can be absolutely devastating to a business. And this invisible walkout can become very, very visible when frustrations boil over, like we saw with the Google walkout, a huge public escalation that only happened after employees felt their concerns were being ignored for way too long. And that really brings us to our final thought. You can optimize your supply chain, you can perfect your quality control, and you can streamline every single process down to the nanosecond. But if you haven't engaged the hearts and minds of the people who make it all happen, have you really built a successful operation? The most critical system of all might just be the one that values its people.